127. 127. 136. 119. All right, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. What you just saw me shooting was a new stage that we're putting together for our 2-gun matches that we're just simply calling the drag race. So you aim at a stake beneath the target. When the buzzer goes off, 5 shots on target as fast as you can. The steel plate's 18 by 24, it's 18 yards away. So as we can see, my best time as I was just shooting was 119. So I've been wanting to do a trigger upgrade on my M&P for some time. So today we're going to go ahead and replace the trigger. We're going to record replacing the trigger so that we can see how it's done and show that anybody can do it fairly easily. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure the gun's empty. There's no rounds in it, so we've got an empty gun. Then we're going to go ahead and remove the upper from the lower. That's done by simply, you've got a pin here and a pin here, so you're going to depress those 2 pins. They don't come all the way out of the gun, you just pull them out to the back side. Release the trigger so there's no pressure on it. Once you pull those pins out, then the upper simply comes apart from the lower. So we'll set the upper out of the way. All right, typically I would not do my gunsmithing out at the gun range, which is where we are right now. But in order to simplify this video and do everything in one fell swoop, I went ahead and decided to do the work out here. So I'm going to do 2 different things to it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a new trigger group. It is the ACT combat trigger from ALG Defense. ALG Defense they're actually owned, the wife of Gessler, I believe is the name of the company, owns ALG. Gessler is one of the best triggers that you can buy for an AR. So this company is owned by his wife. This company makes mil-spec triggers that are designed to be better than your stock mil-spec trigger. So they have less over travel, they have better pull rates, but the triggers are all fully within mil-spec. So if you're in the military or you're in law enforcement and you have to adhere to mil-spec standards, such as trigger pull, which cannot be less than 5.5 pounds, then these are a good option for a trigger for you to go with. So the trigger comes with, of course, the trigger, the disconnect, and a hammer. And then they also gave us a little pin that will help aid in the installation of everything. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install a different spring set from a company called JP Enterprises. This is the 3.5 pound spring set from JP Enterprises. So I'll replace, which they're the yellow springs. When you go online and look for them, you'll see that these are the yellow springs. I'll replace the springs that came with the ALG set with these new lighter springs, which will help lower the trigger pull some. Lastly, I'm going to install the anti-walk pins from JP Enterprises. So the anti-walk pins, these pins that hold my trigger and my hammer in place, I'm going to use these anti-walk pins instead of the stock pins that came with the new trigger assembly. And I'm just going to do that simply from a perspective to keep the guns from ever, or to keep the pins from ever shifting within the gun and potentially walking out of the gun. But in order for me to use these pins, one of the things that JP Enterprises recommends is that you remove the J pin that's in the trigger, or in the hammer assembly. Okay, so the J pin, you can see the J pin through this little hole right there, and then it comes out on this end back here. The J pin is designed to help hold the hammer, to help hold the pin in place. So if I depress it a little bit, I found it makes it easier to depress it in order to do this. So you've got a little hole down here on this end here. If I insert something that will allow me to put some pressure on it, relieve the tension, well, alright, so if I insert something down into this hole, relieve the pressure on that pin, then it allows the retaining pins to come out easier. There we go. Alright, now, if you look in that hole right there, hopefully you can see it, you can see where that J pin comes through. There's a little pin down at the bottom that sticks through. That goes into this retainer slot, and that helps keep this pin from coming out of the weapon when you're shooting it. So, as I said, JP Enterprises recommends that you remove the J pin in order to, when you use the new retainer pins. That will remove any friction that exists on the pin that J pin may create. So in order to remove that J pin, you've got this hole here at the front that you can see the J pin through. You probably can't see in the video, but that J pin has been stamped, so it's been flattened out a little bit in order to prevent it from coming out of the hammer. So in order to remove it, I'm going to break that piece off that's on the inside so that I can slide the pin out. And to break it off, I'm going to find a punch that will fit into that hole, which that one will right there, and that is a 3/32 punch. And then I'm going to simply strike it out. So I'm going to walk over to a different table to do that. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, that broke out the inside of that J pin, which in theory, the J pin's already fallen out when it broke off. So now you can see that J pin is gone. It's no longer sticking out down there. Alright, so now we're going to begin to take out the existing components. First thing we'll take out is the hammer. To take these components out, I'm going to use brass. Again, not an ideal place to do this, but I'm going to use a brass punch set, and then I'm going to lightly tap those pins out. There's the stock hammer. There's the disconnect. And then there's the stock trigger. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put in the new trigger. Actually, I can't put in the new trigger yet. Before I put in the new trigger, I need to replace the spring on the disconnect. Alright, so when I pull the disc, I got to pull the pin out, then I remove the hammer or the disconnect, and here's the spring for the disconnect. So I found that the easiest way to get these out is just kind of twist it out. So there's the old disconnect spring, or the new disconnect string on the new trigger, but here's the one that came with the JP kit. Alright, so it's going to go in the same way, just kind of screw it in until it seats all the way down. Alright, once it seats all the way down, we'll go ahead and put the disconnect back in. Now this time, instead of putting the pin back in, I'm going to put in this pin that came with the kit to hold the disconnect in place. Alright, so that'll poke through, hold that disconnect in place, and then when I put the new pins in, it'll drive that pin out. Alright, we're going to pull this spring off. And then we're going to put the new yellow spring on in its place. There. Now that trigger's ready to go in. So we're going to slide the trigger back down into place. Oh, sorry. We've got to notice how you've got your safety down in there. So you've got to insert that down so it clears your safety. Got to clear your safety. There we go. And drop it down into place. Now, once you've got that into place, we're going to insert one of the JP pins, the new anti-walk JP pins. But before I can insert the JP pin, I need to screw it together one of the ends on it. Alright, these screws all come with blue Loctite on them from the factory. So what we want to do is we want to screw one of the ends in. I'm not going to be able to get it all the way in right now, but I'll just get it in far enough so that it'll stop. Alright, now that I have that in, I'm going to line up that old pin. Hopefully you can see that little pin in there, that temporary pin that I inserted. Then I'll put this pin in its place. And I'll push it through. There we go. So the temporary pin came out for me. The JP bushing, or the JP pin's in. And now I'll have to put in the other side of the JP pin. Alright, so I put the spring on wrong. Some of you knew that as you were watching it. Anyway, the spring should have been beneath it. Okay. Had I looked at the old piece I took out before I put the new piece in, I would have clearly seen that. But now it's where it should be. now we're good to go. So we're going to put the disconnector back in. Put the temporary pin back in to hold the disconnector. Okay. Try not to lose parts here, since I'm working in less than ideal location. Alright, now we're going to slide the trigger back in. Push it forward so it clears the safety. Now it's in place. Going to push down on the whole assembly until we see it line up. Then we can insert the pin. Drop that piece back out. And put the screw back in. And now I have a trigger with some spring in it. Much better than it was a second ago. Alright, so now we're going to put the hammer in. Okay. We'll learn from our last mistake. Let's make sure we have the hammer spring on correct. And again, we don't. So we're going to move the hammer spring. Actually, this is the hammer spring that came with it. We're going to remove the hammer spring. So notice, I don't know if you paid attention to how that hammer spring was on there, but it was actually incorrect from what the factory says it's supposed to be. This spring right here was on this back side, where in reality, it should have been on the front side. Alright, so we've got our new spring. It's going to go on the front side of it. Or I guess the back side in this case. It's going to go like that right there. We're going to insert the hammer spring. It's going to slide down in there. You're going to place those tails to the front of the trigger down in there. Then we're going to push the hammer down in where it's supposed to be. Now, but you know what? Before we can do that, same thing we had to do with the last pin. Let's get the pin started. Alright, now we're going to push that down. Hopefully you can see the hole there is lined up. And drop that pin in place. Alright, now we have the new hammer in there. Locks down in place like it should. All that seems to work appropriately. So before I lose a bunch of stuff, go ahead and put all these parts away. Wasn't going to. Alright. So we'll put the Allen wrench in. We'll hook it on both sides so that it doesn't twist on us. You don't want to make this too tight. Tighten it down enough so it's not going to go anywhere, but don't tighten it down so much that you crack the lower. And this is an M&P 1522, so the lower is actually made out of plastic. All right. Glad I had that little Allen wrench in there. Right, get a little bit of lubricant here. Alright, so I have it on the edge of a Q-tip. So we're going to lubricate this area right there. And we're going to lubricate the hammer, or the disconnector, pardon me. Alright, that's done. Now, another thing I bought, can't talk, I apologize. At the same time that I was doing all this, I bought a JobBob's AR-15 trigger adjuster. You can buy that from JobBobs.com. All of these parts, as a matter of fact, you can buy from JobBobs.com. I believe they sell the trigger. I bought the trigger directly from ALG. But the springs and this part we're getting ready to install came directly from JobBob's. Alright, JobBob's it's a new screw that holds the handle on. Alright, with that screw comes this little set screw that's on the inside. First thing you're supposed to do is take this set screw out, apply blue Loctite to it, and then put it back together. I've already done that. So then I'm going to take a 3/16 Allen wrench. I'm going to remove the screw that holds the handle on. As you're removing the screw, be careful because you have springs along the side there that are for your safety. So what I found was when I remove it, I just hold the handle in place. I just don't want to contend with those springs right now. So again, hold the handle in place. Slide the new screw in. Tighten everything back down. Okay, before I put that screw in, I was supposed to back that set screw back out. I did not do that because I already had that screw in the rifle and I was hoping it was just going to go back into place where it was, but it didn't. So per the instructions, you take the included Allen wrench that came with the part, slide it in through the handle into the center, and there's that set screw down in there. Back that set screw out. Put the gun on safe. Alright. Move the set screw all the way in until it's tight. You don't want to go super tight, but until it's tight. Notice at that point when it's tight that my safety turns, but it's harder to turn. Now you back that screw off an eighth a turn at a time until your safety engages easily. There's still a little catch there, so I'm going to back a little bit further. Right there's perfect. There, I'm done. That's adjusted. Now we can put the rifle back together. So we'll get the upper back. Slide the front part of the upper in place. Slide the rear down. Push the pins back through. And we're done. Cocked. It's on safe right now. Doesn't fire. It's on fire. Gun fires. 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 Hold the trigger. Pull the handle back. Let it go. Make sure that the trigger didn't drop. Notice when I release the trigger, you should hear it reset. Right there. Fires. Resets. Everything's working as it should. So now we can go to shooting the gun again and find out if there was any change. Let me clean up this mess and we'll shoot it here in just a second. So I'm loading up today's new gold standard. Hopefully in a year that statement doesn't make any sense. But as it stands right now, 22 ammo is almost impossible to find. And I was fortunate enough just to come across a couple thousand rounds that I was able to purchase. So what you just saw me load were CCIs. In my other magazine, we're trying Federals. Going to load up the CCIs first. Helps if I load it. .115. Apparently I like 115. Alright, I don't know if you've noticed, a couple of times I've done that. There was only 4 shots that I got off, and I didn't allow the trigger to reset on the 5th trigger. So I'm not releasing the 5th shot. I'm not releasing the trigger enough to allow it to reset completely. I did that with the stock trigger. I've now done it twice with the new trigger as well. .121. .109. Alright, there we go. That was the replacement of a trigger in an M&P 1522. What I can tell you is that the trigger pull is now substantially lighter than it was before. If you can tell, I have 0 travel in that trigger. I'm very happy with the ALG improvement that's been made on the trigger. I'm also very pleased with the JobBob's adjuster that I put in the gun. If it wasn't painfully obvious, this was the first trigger job I've ever done on an M&P. I chose to go ahead and video this one just to show that it's not a very difficult job to do. However, you should always have a gunsmith work on your guns. But if you decide to replace the trigger yourself, it's not a difficult job. Thanks for watching.